Hello everybody, this is the Nitroplanes update for the SU-26 50cc. I'm going to give you the version of what's needing to be updated in this airplane. So anyways, I've got a DL50 from DL USA. I've got a 3000 milliamp nickel metal hydride battery for the ignition. Got the ignition mounted under here with some foam. Got the wrap on here to save everything. Got a regulator at 6 volts, or excuse me, 5 volts, 5.2 volts for the ignition system, and I've got a switch on it, and the Hanger 9 fuel dot, which is real handy. The firewall for the DL50 with the stock cowling is a little too short, so I added a couple extra firewalls, just doubled them up. That helped out quite a bit to get the distance on the motor right. Added a nice simple choke mechanism over here. All it is a wire going back to the choke arm with some zip ties, and it keeps it away from the engine here. That works real nice. Make sure you Loctite all the bolts. I took all the bolts out of everything and Loctited them. And on the firewall, I used angle braces from Lowe's. They're about that long, maybe 3 inches long, and then some like 8/32 bolts and lock nuts instead of gluing it in. It's completely solid. Didn't add any weight, but it actually helped because the airplane needs a lot of nose weight, so that's why the battery's way up here. What else? On the cowling is very nice, and please excuse the workshop, I'm still finishing this thing up. The cowling, fiberglass, however, it's not round like the fuselage is, so when you go to mount it up, it doesn't mount up. So as you can see here, there's a cardboard ring that I used Gorilla Glue, which is very handy stuff. It's actually the cardboard ring that came with the airplane. It came with this inside the cowling, and I cut the outside edges off and used it on the inside. But what I did was I used that ring and glued it in there so it's completely round, and then I cut the center ring out. So now the cowling is completely round, and it matches up the fuselage perfect, and it's nice and stiff. And use a little the grommets, and then I cut out for the muffler and the spark plug on the bottom. On the landing gear, I used the Dubro axles, the bigger ones. I used some 4-inch wheels. They actually look a little more scale, and they'll still fit with some modification to the inside of the wheel pant, so that's good. And right here, I took one of my favorite flying magazines and cut out some inserts here, because these are all holes. These holes get covered by the hatch, but these holes are all open, and there's no air exit in the airplane, so you're going to get a real problem with blowing out monocoque because it's blowing all this air into the fuselage. So cover those holes up. Use these zip ties here to put my two, let's walk around here, two 3000 milliamp 5-cell battery packs in there. Use the stock gas tank, put some foam in there. Got the vent line going out the bottom, got the fill line, got the carb line. Servo for the throttle I mounted quite a ways back just because there was an obvious spot in the fuselage to do it. And then I used the Spectrum 9-channel dual battery receiver, which is going to be good enough. And then I used 20 gauge receiver leads, or servo leads, all the way back to the tail. Mounted one of the receivers for the Spectrum there, another one up. Let's turn on the recording light. Another one up here, and another one right there inside the fuselage. So I also put the data logger in there, and then I used some of the stock hardware to make the rudder dual pull, and I used the Hobby City the Power HD 9150 Metal Gear servos. They're putting out 222 ounces of torque at 6 volts each. So I doubled those up on the rudder. I used the stock horn here, but then I bought some 440 rods and some additional hardware to go ahead and make the pull for the rudder. Used the stock cables. They're real nice. They worked out real good. And then back here I used the stock arms, which I think I'm going to change because the Power HD servos come with this standard, it looks like a Futaba control horn, but they're not going to work because as I can tell you, I can get a little bit of movement out of them, and the thing I'm guessing is going to happen, especially on the ailerons up here, is it's going to jump a tooth, even with these long arms. So I'm going to try to change out some other control horns some metal ones preferably, because I tell you right now, you don't want to jump a tooth on this big airplane, because these ailerons are pretty big. There's my hand. I mean, it's a pretty big setup. And on the tail wheel, I used the Hobby City tail wheel. You can find this on their website. It's a whole lot better than the stock one. It's a lot like the Sullivan or Klett tail wheel, but I used it, made sure I Loctited it. I used one of the stock bolt holes in there, and then I put another screw hole in there and made that work. So it doesn't flex enough where it's going to hit. Use the springs here, Loctited everything. Every bolt is Loctited, so make sure you do that. Use the stock control horns because they're going to work out just fine. Let's see what else. For the most part, that looks like it. There you can see the angle brackets that I used to hold the motor on. And the cool thing is you can have the firewall off in about 5 minutes. So real handy, and not a bad setup. So anyways, that's the deal. Everything came from the kit. The fiberglass landing gear, nice. Use some light flight 4-inch wheels. And I'm probably going to regulate, just for the servo's sake, regulate both batteries to 6 volts with 2 regulators, because right now it's showing about 6.87 volts on fully charged batteries. So that's a little much for the servos. Any rate, hope that helps out. You will have to add with the DL50 about half a pound of lead weight up here in the nose area, additional to the battery pack, and the other 2 battery packs are up here to help out as well. So I weighed it this afternoon on 2 different scales, and I came up with almost 21 pounds, and I didn't really add any extra weight. I mean, I added weight where I had to, but there's nothing unusual here, so I don't know what the story is, but a little bit heavy. So we'll go fly this thing probably this week and see what's up. But 50cc airplane over 20 pounds with no fuel in it, I don't think we're gonna get the performance we're looking for. So good solid kit, real nice airplane. I would go and put some glue in the landing gear block down there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's no large amount of glue holding the gear block, and it is wedged in there between the formers, but some extra formers and some triangle stock and some glue would help. And then of course I epoxy the firewall. Nothing major, and make sure you shrink wrap or cover up your connectors so they don't come undone in flight. Other than that, a lot of Loctite. I can just tell you from big airplane experience, Loctite every single bolt on the airplane and you won't have to worry about it later, because everything will come loose, and you'll find out the hard way if you don't. I mean, even the little stuff like coming in back here, a lot of guys miss this one. Back here on the control horns, there's a screw going through that control horn right there, and it's just got a nut on the other side, and you think it's tight, but make sure you Loctite, especially like here. You've got a bolt on the bottom. Make sure or the bolt going through, make sure you put some Loctite on that, and all these bolts here with nuts, make sure you Loctite those too, or else you'll find out the hard way. So, long video, but this should help all the guys building this airplane. So far it looks pretty good, other than the heavy weight. So we'll see. I'll get you a flying video soon. Thanks. See ya.